been working in the insurance industry for 11 years, so it makes me feel quite old now. 8 years at Lloyd's. I was at a different company for 3 years prior to that. I started off in our London office, spent 3 years working there, and then I moved over to Singapore start of 2018, and with a regional role, from overseeing and promoting our cover holder network, our underwriting agent network. Then I moved over to Hong Kong for a year and a half, and then I've recently returned to Singapore in August to lead our market development in the MEA region. So that's Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. So based in Singapore, it's sort of like our regional hub, responsible for many of our territories. Difficult question to answer, but I think a lot of people would or are currently labeling the market a hard market. So a hard market is basically where there is less supply of insurance, there's less capital, or there's increased demand. So we'll see an increase in rates, increase in price of insurance. So we've definitely seen that over the last couple of years in certain classes. We've seen increasing rates in marine globally, increase slightly. In this part of the world, in Asia Pacific, we've definitely seen increased rates in financial lines over the last year or so. W&I insurance, M&A insurance, and definitely in cyber insurance over the last few years as well. And for those classes, the increase in rates may be due to the increase in demand. They may be due to the lack of capacity or the lack of insurance supply. For cyber, it's probably a little bit different. I think the increase in prices in the cyber insurance market has largely been down to increase in the amount of claims and increase in volume of claims and increase in the value of those claims over the last few years. We've been seeing increased amount of cyber attacks and obviously insurance claims because of that. So that would obviously reflect into higher prices. So yeah, we've definitely seen that over the last few years in cyber. And then more recently, definitely due to the hard market, we've seen increase in prices in the treaty market. So that is mainly down to the reduction in supply of reinsurance globally, which have increased those prices. So cedents and insurance companies are either having to pay higher prices for their reinsurance, increase their excess, or have less coverage than they did the previous year. So, or maybe even a combination of all three. So yeah, difficult in the treaty market over the last few months. And we've definitely seen that at Lloyd's as well. So yeah, it's an interesting time in the insurance market in several classes. And at Lloyd's, we've seen an increase in the rates over the last couple of years, but we've also seen an increase in risk as well, so exposure increase. So it's real growth, not just price inflationary increases in the gross written premium over the last couple of years. We've grown around in Lloyd's in Singapore. We've grown around 20% in 2021 and 2022. So yeah, large increases after what was a quite difficult 2020 for us and for most of the insurance market. And we're hoping or forecasting to grow around 20% in 2023 as well. So yeah, definitely on the insurance side, we're seeing large growth. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on the client, depending on the policy holder, would depend on what changes will be made. So for example, the price may increase for the same coverage as the previous year, or there may be, increase in exclusions, increase in excess, reduction in coverage, for example. So I think that depends on exactly what the client wants and the insurance broker working on behalf of their client, trying to get the best deal and for what is best for their client. So our underwriters at our syndicates here, they've seen increased prices for some policyholders, but there's been a reduction in coverage or increase in excesses depending on what the client wants. Yeah, we've had, I guess, over the last few years, we've had quite a few challenges, all in quick succession. So obviously, COVID, which we're not completely out of the woods yet. I mean, China has just sort of started opening up now, and over the last couple of months, coming out of COVID zero, whilst the West has sort of reduced or basically got rid of their restrictions for about a year and a half now, haven't they? So that was a big challenge in 2020, and in this part of the world we're still feeling it as well. Places like Hong Kong as well, just coming out of those restrictions as well. So that was a large challenge and still is, but hopefully we're out of that now or coming close to. And just the volatility and the increased frequency of these type of events. So COVID being one of them, the Ukraine war at the start of this year, trade tensions, seen an increase in trade tensions over the last sort of 5 years, especially with China and the US, Brexit, over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. These type of things I don't think we really saw coming. Maybe there were warning signs there, but I don't think we were able to sort of rest on the assumptions that we used to have. These things seem to come out of the blue and, as I said, increasing in frequency. So yeah, I mean, for example, the Ukraine war at the halfway point of 2022, we'd reserved just over £1 billion, so probably about 1.2 billion USD for claims relating to the Ukraine war. So that's something that maybe a few months before that started, we didn't really see happening. So that's a huge challenge for us and the whole market. And all those things that I mentioned, so the Ukraine war, COVID, trade tensions, Brexit as well, they probably all have had an effect on inflation as well, which you've sort of seen over the last sort of 9 months or so, increased by oil prices, food prices, and monetary policy changes on top of that as well. All challenges that we've seen in this year alone. So yeah, a lot going on over the last few years, probably compared to the previous few years. So hopefully it settles down over 2023 and 2024. Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I guess one of the biggest changes and one of the biggest challenges as well, maybe, is the working from home. I mean, that's completely changed our industry. It's something that we've adapted really well to, and something that the insurance market as a whole, and the digitalization of placing risks and paying claims and so on, we were well prepared. Lloyd's were well prepared for that. We invested in a placing platform, the PPL Placing Platform Limited, a few years before COVID, so that was up and running and ready to go. So we didn't need to have paper placement or stamping like we used to. But yeah, so we were ready, but that was definitely a huge challenge, which we're still having to deal with. But I think maybe getting people back into the office is probably the challenge, more of a challenge now, where how do we give people the flexibility that they're now used to and now what they want, with their daily lives and their work-life balance. Yeah, and yeah, how are we still as productive as we are? Things like collaboration may be lost with people working from home more. So it's that definitely is a challenge and a benefit maybe from COVID-19. It's great to have the flexibility, but maybe we lose something working from home a couple of days a week. But yeah, I mentioned earlier that COVID-19 was very difficult from a claim point of view. We had over 1 billion global COVID claims at Lloyd's. So obviously quite a difficult year for us, which went into 2021 as well. However, we've, as I mentioned earlier, we've grown we've grown by around 20% in 2021 and again around 20% in 2022. So those challenges, which were pretty difficult to get over back in 2020, I think we've got our heads out of the water now, got out of the woods on many of those challenges. I would say more growth, rate increases for sure in those classes which I mentioned, but definitely growth in those risk areas and exposure areas as well. As I mentioned, we're hoping to grow around 20 to 25% in 2023 from a Singapore point of view. From a class specific basis, cyber, Lloyd's is the largest cyber underwriter globally. We write about 20% of all cyber risks globally, so about 20%. And our estimates, the whole market is worth about 12 billion GBP, and we expect that to triple by 2030. So a huge market with plenty of opportunity over the next sort of 5 to 7 years. And Lloyd's is a big supporter of innovation for cyber solutions and allowing us to keep pace with those ever-changing cybersecurity threats. So cyber is a big one for 2023 and for the subsequent years. And outside of cyber, the real growth areas which we see are probably the ones I've already mentioned as well: financial lines, marine, treaty, mainly on the rate side. Yeah. And in terms of products as well, we've seen an increased amount of parametric products. So we've got a couple of cover holders in this part of the world who have parametric insurance products. One in New Zealand for earthquake insurance. So if certain triggers are met on the magnitude of an earthquake in New Zealand, the cover holder, the underwriting agent, and the syndicate that provides capacity will automatically pay out, and there's no need to assess any damage or any of the claims themselves. So faster payment, reduced costs of assessing those claims, so we can provide a better service to our customers. And similarly in Australia as well, we've got the parametric product underwritten by a cover holder in a similar vein, underwriting Queensland floods and Queensland windstorms. So if the floods are a certain severity or the windstorms are a certain severity, they're automatically paid out. And we have many of those products coming from our innovation lab in London as well, where I think the most recent one we've had is cyber again, really, actually. But if there's downtime on a cloud server at a certain amount of time, say for example an hour, there'll be a certain amount of payout depending on the amount of time the server is down for. So if it's 1 hour, it'll be X amount. If it's 2 hours or 2 days, it'll be X amount of claim payout just automatically. So we're seeing lots of innovation in those areas as well to provide a better service to our policyholders. So hopefully more of that in 2023 and beyond.